Ready when you are, Mr. Chair.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will call the budget hearing meetings to order, and I would ask if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Chair, I have a few members coming into the waiting room right now.
Okay. Oh, okay, excellent.
Okay, for those that just joined us, we have just started with a roll call. Baylor?
Aye.
Connor? Freeman?
Aye.
Fusco?
Aye.
Holland?
Aye.
Kamer? Lombardo?
Aye.
McKittrick?
Aye.
Malik?
Aye.
Mosley? Neal?
Here.
Amobian?
Aye.
Somerville?
Aye.
We have all members present except for Connor, Kamer, and Mosley.
Okay, thank you. And then just a reminder, especially those of you who have not been in the chambers yet for the hearings, our folks that are online, we need to get nice and close to the microphone. And you're not close to the microphone, they're probably going to miss your comments. And then also, when we're listening to the comments of the folks that are online, we really have to tune in for that too. So we're kind of experimenting and playing around here. To those of you that have gathered, kind of the way that we're running the meetings is, there are so many interesting things that we hear from all the different departments. Today we're going to hear from law, we're going to hear from finance, we're going to hear from health, that we as council members are tempted to want to move off the dollar conversation and talk about program. What I've encouraged all of our council members, and they've been very disciplined in doing this, is to really stick to the numbers. So a lot of you, we have your goals, what you have reached last year, what you plan for this year. We look at that kind of away from this meeting. So our questions are really going to be focused around the dollars. And I've even asked council members, when they have a question, it helps us if we can refer to the page that we're asking the financial questions about. So just kind of let you know the way that that's going. And we will begin. Mr. Fricker, I'll open up the meeting asking you to make a few comments, and then we'll go.
Okay, so welcome everyone to day 3 of budget hearings. One item that I would like to discuss before we get started with the law department is we were talking yesterday a little bit about the Child Safety Fund and the school camera program, and I had stated that there was no school camera revenue shown in that fund. I went back and looked at my numbers, and I had in fact put a little bit of revenue in there. So there was about a third of the revenue that we typically get in a normal year that I did put into that program. So that's incumbent upon us to get that program running in order to receive that revenue.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That did come up yesterday. All right. I believe we want to go to...
We'll start with the law department. We have our law director, deputy law director, and chief city prosecutor here.
All right. Ms. Belfance, I'll ask if you could please introduce yourself and everyone else to the committee.
Yes, I'm Eve Belfance, and I'm the law director for the city of Akron. And here is Chris Reese, the deputy assistant law director, and chief prosecutor Craig Morgan. And I know all of you well, and I know all of you know that the city provides comprehensive legal services across the boards to all departments, in addition on the civil side as well as criminal prosecution. And I'll certainly allow Chief Prosecutor Morgan to say a few words about anything he'd like to say about the prosecutor's office.
Thank you, and obviously I've worked in concert with many of you throughout the years. You understand the nature of what we do at the prosecutor's office. We prosecute all the misdemeanor offenses for the city of Akron as well as all of our outlying jurisdictions. We also provide round-the-clock, 24/7, real-time legal advice to all of our police officers, as well as a number of other issues, including working with counsel on liquor permit objections and other quality of life issues facing our citizens here in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Like to offer something?
I can't get my green light to come on.
There we go. Nice and close to the mic. Thank you.
Come on.
There you go.
No, Chris Reese, the Deputy Law Director. I guess I'd like to see a de facto head of litigation. City of Akron self-insured for everything except its cars, so we have all litigation in-house, and I kind of oversee that. So if there's any questions regarding the litigation end of the law department, I certainly am here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks each and every one of you for being here. Ms. Belfonte, would you like to take over from here? Are you ready for questions, or?
I think we're ready for questions.
Okay, very good. Just first thing, as I was going through here, looks like a lot of you have added on an audit and budget. You're showing two additional.
That's in.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. I'm sorry, Steve.
That's in the finance department. So in the law department, we have added a couple attorneys and one person that's going to deal with the public records requests that we're getting. So we had a couple positions in police, and then we have one additional one in law, just to deal with that volume that is really becoming, it's taking up a lot of resources from the law department. So we've added a body to to handle some of that workload.
Okay. I guess we're all curious, how many attorneys did you have to hire to replace the one that you lost to city council? All right, any questions I'll start with anybody in the chamber. Mr. Fusco?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Freeman. The question is so we're hiring an attorney exclusively for public records request, or how is that going to be handled?
No, we're hiring a person who is more of an administrative person who would be trained to process public records.
Okay, so it
requests.
won't be
it's
an
not
attorney per se?
Not an attorney, no.
Okay, and this is obviously a budget question, but if you could, I mean, what percentage of time, as opposed to maybe budget, would be assessed to just simply public records request? Is it possible to even do that, or you could get back to us?
I'd have to get back to you on
yeah.
that, but it's a significant increase. It's a significant amount of time because moving through, gathering, examining, redacting is a
right.
significant
And that requires an
amount of
attorney,
labor.
obviously, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, Ms. Holland, thank you.
Thank you. Mine is a follow-up to Councilman Fusco's question. I'm guessing that you're also pressed into service for other departments that
Yes.
have public records requests that are submitted. Is that right?
Yes.
So
Yeah, we review and advise legally on all records for the city, all record requests.
Okay, so when we're talking about an administrative technical assistant, we're talking about assembling documents that are perhaps responsive, but then we still need lawyers to have
Yes.
a look and make
Yes.
sure that there's nothing privileged, nothing that needs to be redacted, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
both.
Okay, so it's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. So how many attorneys total? I'm looking here, and I think I see the number, but
Well, let me give a count. So there's attorneys in both the, obviously in the civil division, in the administration, in the prosecutor's office.
To make sure our
Let me
finance director gives us the
come up
exact
with
count. I don't want to
I'll give you a
misspeak.
count here in a second. $13, 21, 22, 23. 23, looks like.
And your individual that's going to be handling public records, is that reflected on page 134?
That would be reflected on page, let's see, they're going to be in the civil division, so 135, I think it's going to
Okay.
be, yeah.
There are questions from individuals in the chambers? Mr. Malley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Belfance, Mr. Reese, Mr. Morgan. I appreciate all the service done, not only by you, but by everyone in the law department. I know firsthand it can be a lot, and I know how much effort that you'll put into this job, so thank you very much. I had one question. There's recently reported a settlement in litigation regarding a police shooting. I think it was $900,000. Is it reflected in this budget?
So it's going to be reflected in the finance citywide budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it is reflected in
It is
here?
reflected in the budget, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. And looking over, Ms. Amobian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Belfance, I know over the years we have encouraged and tried to monitor somewhat the legal work that we do internally versus externally. Can you hear me? Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Maybe if you could speak up just a little more. I'm straining, but I have the oldest ears in the chamber, so maybe just a little bit louder.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better, yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Belfance, over the years we've asked the law department to monitor the legal work that's done within the department versus outside the department, and just wondering, is that going down, up, or what? How much are we finding ourselves spending on legal work outside of the system?
I would say,
I'm sorry.
do you have a sense of
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I was looking up
It's
something
our
here.
numbers,
Can you
approximately
hear
the
me
same
now?
for outside counsel numbers. And I-
Using outside counsel
Yeah, I think,
versus...
yeah, my perception is that that's fairly steady in terms of,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So the outside counsel costs are spread throughout, there are some costs in the general fund, some that we have within the police budget, and then some we have some, because of the CSO issues, we have some legal costs within the sewer fund as well. So those are the primary areas where the legal costs hit.
Okay, and I don't know, Ms. Amobian, were you speaking in terms of...
If you had to estimate how much we're spending externally, how much would it be?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Mr. Fricker?
Need to repeat that?
The amount of legal work that we're doing outside of
Okay, we can compile that. Yeah, I don't have that off the top
Okay.
of my head.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Yes, Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the extent that these costs are showing up in various departments, are they typically denominated as service contract expenses or some other category?
Service contract expenses, yeah, so we have we do have a line item called legal services. They typically appear under that line item, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Questions? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Fusco.
Yeah, thanks. We're looking at the cost center fund for law civil as well as the law criminal, which is both sides of the aisle, if I understand correctly. And if you look under service contracts, how much was actually expended and what was budgeted, at least in terms of 21, you see a reduction there, and then the budgeted amount is consistent with 21 on page 135. And then if you look on page 136, it looks like the budget amount in 21 was $137,000 for service contracts, and I assume this is what we're kind of talking about here in terms of this budget that we're discussing today. But I
That's actually
understand-
something different. So what you're seeing on page 136 represents our domestic violence investigators that is part of the prosecutors. So those costs are split between this budget, and then we have a grant that was able to absorb some of those other costs. So if you look at the next page, page 137, I believe, you're going to see the rest of that.
Gotcha.
Some of those other costs, yes.
So the service contracts are, it doesn't include the legal piece, is what you're saying?
It would include the legal fees, but typically, those are shown in the finance citywide budget. Some are shown in police, if there's a specific matter related to police. Yeah, some are shown in sewer.
But just for, I guess my point was kind of like, just for this department, which is kind of like what we're looking at, that's the actual expenses for services outside.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and the other one, which was explained last year, was for, that is assessed to the department typically, correct?
In many cases, it is, yeah. If it's something specific to a certain department, then typically we will charge it under that department.
But in terms of law, this is where it's found.
Correct, yeah.
Thanks.
Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fricker, just so that I am absolutely sure that I understand, to the extent a matter goes into litigation and outside counsel is engaged by the city, the department where that litigation or that dispute arose is actually charged the expense of outside counsel, and it would appear in their budget?
They typically are, yes.
Okay. So we're not likely to see in the law department's budget a charge or a projected expense for outside counsel.
That is correct.
Is that right? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure I had it.
And those would show up under service contracts? Was that generally where it would show up in the
Yes.
budget?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and so I think in answer to Ms. Amobian's question, she's saying, okay, what's the total of those? So, okay, great. All right, looking for any other questions on the board over here? Okay. Thank you for everything you do. I think Mr. Malik probably has the greatest appreciation because he spent so much time over there with you, but thank you for everything you do, and congratulations where you gentlemen are now, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good questions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. I think our final department, and certainly not least, at least in my eyes, is the Department of Finance.
Now, we have, after that, I have health listed.
So health, as you all know, so we have a health budget that is shown. The majority of that is our annual contract with the Summit County Department of Public Health. So it basically just includes the contract expenditures from that contract, and those dollar amounts really have not changed in several years. There's also a couple contracts related to the full-term first birthday programs run by Tamika Rose within that budget, but those are the primary costs contained within that budget.
Okay, good.
So that's the very last page in the budget book is the health
very good.
department, yeah.
Mr. Malik, not to take things out of order, but
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Malik,
fine,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Sure. Definitely, especially with how important health has been over the last year or two and will continue to be in the future, perhaps it would be possible, perhaps maybe this coming Monday or at some point before we pass the budget, to ask our health commissioner to come in and speak to us briefly, and to have a similar, it's pretty similar setup to the other presentations we've had. I think that would be helpful.
And that would be, Ms. Moby, and I'm not sure if you heard those comments or not, but there was a request maybe if we could have someone from the county come in.
To do what?
Go ahead.
I think, Councilwoman Amobian, my point was that it would be helpful to have our health commissioner come in and give a similar presentation to what the other departments have done. So perhaps we could invite her to come on Monday to Health and Human Services.
Okay. I think I heard what you said, to invite somebody from the county to come in and talk to us about our health.
Yes, I think the request was if we could have somebody from county health come over before we pass the budget, and maybe in your committee, give us a presentation.
Sounds fun. Great. More information, the better. Could you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Sure, go ahead.
I think I'll go outside to my car. But no, that's fine. The more information, the better. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions as far as that? Good suggestion. We'll have somebody in this Monday from the county. Mr. Fricker.
Okay, so the Department of Finance. So 2021 was a year that I think will go down in the record books for the Department of Finance in terms of the number of things that we had on our plate last year. I could certainly say for myself, and I think I speak for most of the people in the department, or certainly those that were involved with our Workday implementation, that it's the most challenging year in my 30 years here at the city, by far. You know, the combination of doing that system upgrade, which is something that you only do once every quarter century, along with, you know, the impact of COVID, the fact that, you know, we did receive the ARPA funding, which is a very good problem to have, but nevertheless, you know, puts a lot of, you know, work on, you know, not only the finance department, but all the departments within the city. Just made it an extremely challenging year. My department, you know, somehow managed our way through things. You know, they worked extremely hard. There were times when we all got a little bit, I don't know, just discouraged is probably the wrong word, but, you know, where we were just we were so overwhelmed with work that,
They made a movie about that.
Yeah.
It's called The Perfect Storm.
So we kind of, but everyone persevered, and we made it through. We had a successful implementation of our software. That's not to say that we don't still have some work to do, because we do, but you know, overall was a successful implementation, and we are up and running with Workday now. We'll talk a little bit about, there's another major project that's going on, which is our meter project, and, you know, our utility billing office is heavily involved with that, with the CIS, or the software component of that project, which is going to be another major project that's going to impact all the citizens of Akron, you know, with better information about their utility billing and real-time reads on their meter. So it's going to be a great project for the city, but nevertheless very challenging to implement. But we will talk about that. So going to kind of briefly go through you know, some of the goals and accomplishments for the department. Obviously, at the top of the list is our implementation of the Workday system. So, you know, we were able to go live with that system in April of last year. You know, have made it through almost a year now. We are still, you know, to this day, kind of tweaking and configuring things, you know, to our liking. You know, as you do these very complex systems, you know, you make decisions going along the way about what the best way to do things are, and as you start using it, sometimes you decide, like, well, maybe we should do this a little bit differently. So we have encountered a couple of those things. You know, we're working to kind of reconfigure things, you know, to work better for us. So we're doing that now, but overall we have a very stable system right now. The goal for this year, I think, is to get out there and really work with the departments on educating them on how to use the system. So we did do some of that last year, but I don't think as much as we still need to do. So we need to work with our departments, you know, show them how they can get information out of the system, build some reporting for them. You know, Workday has all kinds of capabilities, dashboards, and you know, information that once it's configured right is going to give our managers, you know, really a very good look at the operations that are going on in their departments, what their staffing is doing, what their supplier expenses are, all those types of things. So it's just, it's further kind of building out that information that they can get, so that they can have all the information they need to do their jobs. Another key focus this year is going to be also sort of Workday related. Is there's a kind of a second component to it, which is the piece of software that we use to prepare this budget. And we literally just started that implementation. It was kind of a phase 2 of Workday. We just started that late in the fall last year. We're able to get far enough along that we're able to use this new system in order to generate all of the budget documents that we've been using here in these hearings. The next step, to take that to the next step, is to work with our departments to show them how to use it. So they're going to be actually going in and creating the budget using this tool. This is the first time that we've had a budget tool that truly is something that can be shared between the finance department and the various departments of the city, and allow them to actually go in and categorize things according to how they need to spend those dollars. So we are looking forward to that. That's something that we're going to work on this summer. Okay, so now I'm going to go through our individual divisions very quickly, starting with our accounting division led by Kim Guzman. So they were, one of the key divisions that was involved with the Workday. So they, obviously we replaced at the same time both our payroll system and our financial system. So a lot of that work fell onto Kim and her staff, and they worked very hard to get that system up and running, which it is. So that was a key accomplishment in 2021. They're also working on a couple things with, overhauling our travel policy to kind of work with the way the new Workday system works. I had one other thing I wanted to highlight here. As well as one of the other things that we've been doing with Workday is increasing our use of ACH payments. So, with our banner system, we were still kind of old school with, paper checks. We've been able to start enrolling our vendors into the ACH program so that we can pay them with electronic funds payments, which is much more efficient than what we had before. Okay, another key division that was involved with the Workday implementation was our audit and budget division, led by Cindy Donnell. And we also have, I think we have much of the staff here. So we have Mike Wheeler here. We have Monica Four, who's our newest employee in audit and budget. So, all of the budgetary and financial and cash balance setups that we did in Workday were accomplished by our audit and budget division. And in addition to doing all of that, each year we have a number of what are called GASB statements that we have to implement, and they're listed in our goals and objectives. And each year there's typically 6 or 8 different things that we have to implement as part of our financial statements. So we did a number of those in 21, and we have another, large list that we have to do in 22. So those are very labor intensive to do those, but our audit division, every year they rise up to that challenge and implement those GASB statements. Okay, our communications division led by Malcolm Valentine. So communications really serves two primary functions. They are responsible for the city's networking infrastructure. We've been, for a number of years now, we have been expanding our fiber network out to various city buildings, and Malcolm has listed a number of new facilities that we're able to expand that fiber network out to, and that allows us to have better internet connectivity. It's allowing us to expand some of our camera systems, so just taking advantage of that latest technology. And this is an area where, Akron really has been ahead of the curve, in many respects. So we have a very advanced fiber network, thanks to Malcolm, that we started years ago, and really are in a very good place in comparison with a lot of municipalities in terms of our network infrastructure. And then they're also responsible for a lot of the radio technology that we have that's used by our safety forces and our service departments in terms of radios and that connectivity equipment that's in a lot of our city vehicles. One of the new things that we're doing this year is we have a new GPS system in our vehicles. So that's the AT&T mobility. Yeah. So it's going to be, it's going to give our service and safety departments a lot better information about what's going on with the equipment that's out there in the field. Okay, we do have some new faces within the finance department, and one of them is our new tax commissioner, Pat Chidock. So Pat came to us from the city of Lakewood and started last year and has really implemented a lot of technology projects within the tax department. Obviously, she's closely monitoring the different state law and impacts from some of the work at home laws that have been going on at the state. So she's keeping her eye on that and working with other tax commissioners throughout the state. One of the big projects that we have for 2022 is we're going to implement a new e-filing system. So we're working on that right now, and I believe that should be up and running for the 2023, really the 2022 tax year. So next year we'll have a new e-filing site. Okay, our information technology division, and they've been as busy as any division in the entire city. So we have with us Dan Rosnick, who is our IT applications manager, Bill Fatica, who is our service desk manager, and Engelbert Gao, who's our systems and infrastructure manager. I don't think Engelbert's here, but so we have three people that are running that division. We've been adding some employees, so we have budgeted 20 employees now within the IT division, and have really made a lot of progress in the past really couple years in terms of improving our computer systems, improving our security. One of the big things that we just implemented is multi-factor authentications, which is a key security component, which is the thing where when you sign into a network, you then have to authenticate on either your phone or a token. So we're implementing that right now. Another key implementation that we're currently going through is our Office 365. So we have moved from buying individual software license to a subscription-based platform where we'll always be on the latest and greatest version of Microsoft Office. And with that comes some really exciting functionality in the form of Microsoft Teams, which is going to kind of change the way that city employees share information. So instead of having files that exist out in, like on a file server, you kind of create, it's almost like a text thread where you create a conversation. You might have 4 people working on a project. They create a specific group for that project, and they share their files in that Microsoft team. So it's really going to change the way that we work here at the City of Akron. Another new face here at the City of Akron is our new purchasing agent. Her name is Luba Kramer. So Luba came to us from the University of Akron, just started late last year, and because of her experience at the University of Akron, was able to really, get up to speed quickly. They're obviously also a public sector entity, and, so she's been able to jump right in and, and work with our purchasing division. So another area where, Workday has really changed the way we do things, and we hope to kind of further, streamline some of our purchasing processes using the new software.
2 less budgeted employees, but the numbers don't change.
Correct, yeah. So we, we had a couple employees that left. We decided that those employees, so to your question earlier, we feel like we can operate with less employees within purchasing, and then we did add a couple employees in our audit division. So, that's something that we'll closely watch. If we feel like we need more people in purchasing, that's something that we will look to add some employees there, but we think for the 2022 budget, we can operate without a couple of the employees that left. Okay, our Treasury Division, led by Cheryl Bryson, our treasurer. And then we also have Tony White and Amy Woodall here from our Treasury Division. So Treasury is an area where the impact of Workday has really made their lives a lot easier. So there was a lot of built-in functionality that was part of that product that helped with our bank reconciliation process. We're kind of building this out still, but it's going to be able to track our debt service payments a little bit better. So, they're kind of working with that in terms of, building some of the functionality around tracking the debt within our Workday software. Another key project that we have coming for this year is in our assessments division. We're working on a new assessment system that's kind of tied in with our GIS platform. So that's something that we hope to do here in 2022, which is going to be kind of a vast improvement in our assessment software. It's going to give us much better data. It's going to give us that kind of GIS tracking component for the properties that we assess.
I don't know if you were coming back. You jumped over taxation. You went from, did we go purchasing and then treasury, and did we miss taxation? Or?
No, I think I covered tax, yeah.
Wow, I must have been asleep that moment, all right?
I think I did, yeah. And then finally, our utilities business office.
Okay, I need to ask the question. Who all's in taxation? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. I absolutely beg your pardon. Is it Pat? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, finally, our utilities business office, led by Brian Riemann. As I mentioned, they're about ready to probably go through what a lot of us went through with the Workday project in the form of this, the new utility billing software. So, as many of you know, we kind of had to alter the time frame of that project a little bit. Originally, we were going to do the meter installs first, but due to the supply chain issues and the fact that these meters use computer chips, and we were just not able to get those meters, so we have kind of switched gears, and we are doing the billing software component of that first. So that is scheduled to go live at the end of this year, and so Brian and his team are working very hard on that right now.
Were they, and I don't know if it affects the numbers, were they disappointed that we couldn't get the meters right now, or, because it seems like everybody's pretty scrunched up here?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had a game plan originally, and, when we found out we were not going to be able to get the meters. Now, as Mr. Lotto mentioned yesterday, we did get some of the larger meters for, some of the commercial meters that we have, but in terms of the residential ones, we don't have those yet.
So are there maybe some things budgeted that you might not expend this year because those residential meters are going to be delayed? You said supply chain, is that going to?
That's possible, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, let's start in the chambers. Questions? A lot of stuff there. Mr.
Go ahead. I went first last time. You go first this time.
Flip for it. Okay, Mr. Mallett.
It's like, who's on first? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Fricker. Thank you to each and every one of you. I know it's been a difficult time, particularly during COVID, and we really appreciate it. I have a couple questions. First, with regard to fiber and the amounts designated for expansion of fiber, what page is that?
So the fiber, the communications budget is going to be on page, let me find that here. Okay, 38 is where communications is. So that's the staff that is doing that. And then, so communications really has two budgets. They have an operating budget, and then they have what's called a rotary fund, which is an internal service fund. So they do a lot of work on behalf of other departments. So a lot of the materials they buy would be purchased out of that fund.
Okay, so we're jumping back to what we covered on the first day there.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So they were still shown under public safety, even though they are now under the Department of Finance.
And I guess looking at page 38, I mean, where would kind of all of the hardware and all of that be located? Is there
So some of the hardware might be, in terms of when we do capital projects,
Sure.
it might be incorporated into those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the settlement, the police settlement that we were referring to earlier, where is that located?
So that's going to be located on page, let me open this up here again. Give me 1 second here.
I think Mr. Reese said 40. Sorry, I thought you said. Oh, sorry.
So finance citywide is going to be on,
So 140? Is that under other expenses?
it's going to be down at the bottom, correct, yes.
Okay. And then just a final question or comment. With regard to the meter project, I'm sure it's going to be, a pretty significant change, not only internally, but for residents. And I know, one thing, we all get calls when there's a big systemic change like that. Have we set aside some money and some planning to do a lot of awareness work?
Yes, there's going to be, there's a change management component to this entire project. And part of that is going to be, educating the residents on, first of all, one of the big changes, we're changing from billing in HCF to gallons. So you're going to have a much more, a more detailed read. So, as many of you know, if people use, most people use 4 or 5 HCF a month, and your bill can vary widely. If you just use a little bit more, you might go from 4 to 5, and then your bill is going to go up, substantially. Or this will be, I think it'll be much more, if you're using essentially the same number of gallons of water per month, your bill is going to be much more, uniform across the months than with the current system.
Thank you. Do we know when that awareness work will start? The awareness and education?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good question because it lands here, and the better information that can be distributed, hoping that that's budgeted in here, better communication that can go out. I mean, not just for us, but for the good of the citizenry as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't think they could hear the answer to that because it
Oh.
wasn't to a microphone. Was that this summer that you said? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'm going to come to Mr. Fusco, and then I'll come to Mr. Lombardo, and then over to Ms. Holland, and then to you, Ms. Amobian. Mr. Fusco.
Thank you. On page 153, the service contracts, I see, how much was budgeted in '21, how much was expended, and then what the budget is for '22. Just curious what that would represent. It's about a $1 million reduction on page 153 under
Service
IT.
contracts?
Yeah, information technology under service contracts. The
Right.
budget for 20.
So a lot of that was due to some extra costs we had that were a result of the Workday implementation.
So I was
yeah.
assuming, but I wanted to make sure and check off because it's, yeah. And then the budget is like almost $1 million lower than actually what was expended. So we're closing that piece of it out or slowly.
Right, and the other thing is we still had some costs because it was kind of we implemented in April, we still had some costs from the old software that we had to cover in 2021. So we paid both for PeopleSoft and for Workday last year, so that's,
Okay. Kind of assumed that, but didn't want to do that. Then on page 161, under the JED piece, and just curious about this, and that is under the intra-fund expenses piece of it. It seems as though how much was expended and how much was budgeted, and we're going to continue
yeah,
with
so
that.
those had to do, the prior years had to do with the fact that we had some tax payments that were recorded that should have been for Akron that we had to move, and therefore we had to have an interfund expense to move those from the JED fund to the Akron fund. So that's what those older expenses represent.
Okay, good. And then I see on the debt service side, in terms of what we spent in '21 and then what's budgeted, just curious about that.
Right, so I budgeted a little
Debt
bit more
service.
debt here in case the income tax drops a little bit. So I wanted to have a little bit of extra capacity here in this fund, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lombardo.
I'm not sure if this is a Treasury question or a utility business services question, and I hope I'm not putting myself on the hook here, but is there anywhere on the budget where we could, the implementation, do we have paperless or auto bill pay with our water bills?
We do.
We have that?
We do, and I'll let Mr. Reeman speak to that, but we
I know
have a
you-
number of different options that you can pay. So you can pay, obviously, by mail. You can have a
Yeah.
direct debit of your bank account. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Or you could pay by credit card.
Excuse me, the people from home won't be able to hear you if you're not in microphone. Thanks.
There you go.
There you go.
Currently, you can pay either through ACH, which is the automatic draft, each month from your bill. We also have an IVR and a web where the individual can pay by credit card or through their bank account through a checking or savings, and they can pay that way each month.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is really for the benefit of those who are at home. I'm looking at page 149, and I think I understand what this represents, but it's entitled Tax Increment Financing, or TIF. Mr. Fricker, could you walk us through what these numbers represent, please?
So these numbers represent when a capital project is done and the city makes improvements for that project, and they finance that by the property owner will pay property tax on that on those improvements, on the incremental increase in those improvements, but instead of being paid as property tax, they are instead put back to reimburse the city for, the work that we put in.
For the improvements.
Yeah.
And so these numbers reflect then the city's advancing of the expenses that
So it's a combination of, there's some debt, and then there are some projects where we have agreed to give the TIF back to the company. And so some of those are representative of that. So it's either debt or we pay some of the TIF back to the company.
Is that what you see reflected here?
Yes.
Is that the fluctuation in numbers?
Right.
Can you direct us to what you're looking at that suggests that there was a return on a TIF? I'm just trying to understand the math.
When you say return on the TIF, I don't...
That in some instances, the TIF ends, or there's no continuation of the program, as you just said.
I'm still not sure I'm following the question.
At some point, either...
Yeah, the TIF does drop off, so we have TIFs drop off and new ones that are added all the time, yeah.
Okay. Are you able to tell us what TIF programs are represented on this particular page?
Yes, we could get a list of that.
Okay. I'd like to know. Thank you.
There'd probably be a lot of programs reflected by the
Yes,
numbers we see
yeah.
on this page. And then at the end of the TIF, then we just take, the tax then rolls back into our school system, once the TIF has been satisfied, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So, but yeah, there would be a lot of projects on here that...
Like more than 5 or more than 100?
Oh, yes.
More than 100? Okay. I'm sorry, say it again, 180? Okay, thank you, that helps.
Okay.
Okay.
Good question, thank you. All right, and now, Ms. Amobian, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. I moved outside. Mr. Fricker, one of the things that, and I'm sure Shelley Goodrich didn't do it by herself and had the whole department, but she was doing some real groundbreaking work with trying to provide opportunities for minorities and women and others to take advantage of some of the work that's generated by the city. Now, with the Workday software, would we be able to, or would your department be able to generate reports on a regular basis to show us what we have done and what we are doing, to look at comparisons like quarterly or something? I don't want to add to anybody's workload, but I'm just wondering, since we do have this new software, would it be able to generate reports on a regular basis so we can kind of track how we're doing in these areas where we're trying to do some more in, creative ways of being inclusive? Yes,
so I know that the system does have, some data fields that are related to, minority vendors and that type of thing, which can be tracked. So the answer is yes, we can produce reporting that shows that data.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have on a regular basis. Now I'm looking at this other slide here, and you can represent, I think it's page 1, the one that talks about the community learning centers. Is that 148?
Okay.
Yeah, 148.
Mm-hmm.
Now tell me what that is telling us.
So 148 represents, as we've done the CLC projects, we've been issuing bonds and laddering debt on as we've gone through the project. So I think and we've issued the last of the bonds that the CLC tax can support. So we are at a point now where initially we built up a reserve until all of those bonds have been issued. So the tax was more than enough to support the debt service on the bonds for a number of years. Once we got up to where the last bonds were issued, then we got into a situation where now we are beginning to draw down on that reserve. So the $2 million that we budgeted here represents what we think we may draw on the reserve this year based on the tax collections we're expecting. Now, one thing that we did do late last year is we refinanced a number of the CLC bonds, which yielded about $2 million a year in savings. So that number should drop a little bit, and it, you know, assuming that we eventually get tax growth again, eventually that, you know, we hopefully would stop drawing on the reserve in time, so that, you know, as you're aware, these bonds go out to 2033. So that's when everything stops. The bonds are paid off and the 0.25% tax stops.
Also, we still have a long way to go. I was thinking that in my lifetime I'll be able to see the end of this, but you said 2033, right? I hope I'm around, but we still got a few more years to go. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fricker.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments from any member, either online or in chambers? Yeah, thank you seems inadequate to all of you folks, but I guess our promise to you is there'll be a check on Friday. That's the day that you get paid. But and you know, when I look at all these things that affect us every day, and we don't even give thought to it. I go out and I get on my computer, or I, you know, pay my taxes. I don't think about that.
There's a lot of items and services and supplies that go into the operation of a city that I think that most of our citizens would never know. We have to, you know, have these services and have to have all these contracts and things to keep the operations of these departments going. Yeah. It really is, you know, a very complex operation.
And I probably owe an apology to you, because I think last year we went through all this and you had all these answers. And I said to somebody, I said, that's a mental illness of some kind. You can have all of those answers to everything that we, and I don't mean to make light of anything, but thank you for that. And you know, I know that we've had some questions that we've thrown at you, said to get back to you, but just very replete in what you've offered, and Steve, appreciate that very, 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 very much. And finally, I want to say to each and every council member, I know did you have a comment? Yes, please.
I just had more of a general question on the budget for Mr. Fricker.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Could you just speak generally to the overall debt picture and, you know, our bonds and our bond ratings and outlook for that?
So our bond rating has stayed stable. We were downgraded back in 2020, I believe. And that was, a lot of that was based on, you know, the impact of COVID and the outlook for, you know, declining tax revenues. You know, because we were able to take some of the federal money that we did get and have it help us build our reserves, you know, we've had a stable bond rating now since that time. Our debt, you kind of have to look at it in two pieces. While overall it's going up because of, primarily because of the sewer project. The debt that is funded with income tax is, you know, albeit slowly, is declining. Last year was kind of our high point for the income tax debt that we pay. So if we, you know, are diligent about like watching how much debt we issue, we should continue to see our debt, you know, decline, you know, slowly over the next few years.
And the remaining debt is largely in the enterprise, funded by enterprise
Yeah,
things like sewer
so,
and
you
water?
know, most of our, most of our increasing debt is related to the CSO projects that we're doing, and that is really all in the form of these WPCLF loans. So we really have no sewer bonds outstanding right now. All of our sewer debt is in the form of, well, I shouldn't say that. There are some bonds, but they're not revenue bonds that we issue directly to investors. They're all through the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund.
Thank you. And then, just a final question. I know that there was, one of the assumptions built into the budget was no increase in water sewer rates this year. That, I guess, was that part of, I know there was an ongoing rate review. Was that
That's
rate
something that
review
we
complete?
continue to do, yes. So, you know, we are, you know, at a point where, it's similar to what I said for the CLC, you know, we've been adding more and more debt in sewer each year because we've had these projects that we built out, primarily the tunnel. That debt just came on in 2020. You know, so we were building up cash in our sewer fund for a number of years, and now it's declining. So, you know, the purpose of the rate study is to look at, you know, those sewer rates and our cash balance and determine, you know, when potentially we would need to look at you know, any kind of adjustment in rates.
Does that study also look at the affordability to citizens?
It does, and that's something that we are working all the time, still negotiating with the EPA on, you know, what their methodology is for looking at affordability.
Is there any documentation from that rate study that can be shared with council?
I will check with, you know, with the service director and see what we, you know, what we have from that.
Okay, thank you. And just a final question for you, Mr. Chair. If there are places where, I know in the first instance, where we see places where we might want to propose or suggest adjustments to the budget, what would be the best way of doing that and communicating that with the committee?
I think probably direct it to Mr. Fricker, and I would say President Somerville.
Okay.
And Mr. Fusco, do you want his leadership? You want like to be included in on that as well? So I guess leadership and Mr. Fricker.
And perhaps that would also be appropriate for discussion in Budget Committee on Monday as well?
Sure.
All right. And I think the point there that I would make, and I'll reach out via email, but particularly the Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Force recommendations that we discussed on the first day regarding a cabinet level official who would work on driving forward that implementation of that report, as well as the deputy police auditor, I think are important things that we should consider, as well as the housing proposal made by the municipal court yesterday. You know, they're coming to us with an opportunity to hopefully reduce the systemic issues. So I think we should, you know, it's certainly worth their further deliberation.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some conversation around that here very, very soon. But yeah, as soon as you could get that in and we can look at it before, you know, if we can see it before committee, that'd be great. I think Mr. Fusco, you had something?
Yeah, just all I wanted to mention was that all those out there who were involved with that Workday and the stress that brought you, we appreciate, because I'm too young to know what it's like to go through a change like that in terms of IT and such, but I've heard stories. In all sincerity, though, my wife has been involved with the county side with their changeover, and I know it's extremely stressful. And I was involved with service a long time ago whenever we had to do that. It's not only the little things that you click on your computer, but it's the way you do business. And it is, I appreciate how much stress that can bring to not only yourself, but to your families too. And really kudos to you guys, and thank you so much for getting through it. I really appreciate it, because I know it's, at the end of the day, it's a worthwhile endeavor, so thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we went through, my day job, we just went through a big change using something called Salesforce. And it's had to be written to us. I am 65. And it feels it too, because there's so many, I mean, monumental changes. That was a numbers question I had in the numbers that we saw here regarding, I keep wanting to call it workforce, Workday. Are there are there numbers built in here for training your employees? Or is that just something that's going to happen from department to department?
So we had some, we're going to do most of our training, I think, internally.
Okay.
You know, so we did have some training that was built into kind of the implementation last year. I don't know that there's any dollars specifically from outside training, you know, maybe to the extent there's a little bit in the IT budget. But for the most part, we're going to do our training internally. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, I'd like to say to all my council members, thank you. Times where I seem to be more firm than maybe you're used to. I just knew it was very important for us to stay on target, and we have, and each and every one of you to be commended for that. I think in the few years that I've been doing this, I think that the committee has done a good job. I don't know if you'd agree with me, Steve, of sticking to the numbers.
I think we
and
did,
issues
yeah, absolutely.
around numbers. And I think each and every one of us have more questions about what all these departments are doing, and ingenuity and new programs, and we're going to be following up on that and hopefully hearing more about that through our sundry committees. But with that, I thank each and every one of you, and we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.